Claire and the exhibit she curated downstairs, and we worked together to put together the LBA show that's open now. The opening was last Saturday. So really a time, I think, for us as citizens of this earth to think about our future, and really my focus is how do we do this together? And so a beautiful segue from yours. Yes, it's by the street, but there are other ways too that we can look at data and how we move forward together. So data democratization, and so what does that mean? It's really having access to existing data that everyone can share in that decision making. And probably now the most volatile issue where this is coming into play is data centers. So there's a whole corner over here making decisions, and the rest of the world is over here who have to live with those impacts. That's an extreme situation, but even relative to climate change, there's a lot of data that exists that we need to share, we need to be thinking about for our collective future together. So yes, looking at this in terms of the data and the information in climate science, we look at the utility of that science. It also builds trust in science. And that is just being attacked from a lot of sectors now, just disbelief in facts. And so it's also a way to really bolster against that too. And then ultimately, we're looking at how do we protect public health, how do we protect our environment that we're dependent upon, and do this together. This is skipping. So to give you a quick snapshot, NOAA used to put this data together. This got all taken down. There's thankfully a new organization and a website, climate.us, that's just been stood up. And there are a number of the NOAA scientists that have been brought over, and they were just repopulating a lot of this data. So that's a big force coming forward. But this just shows you the type of data that they collected. So to look here more broadly across the country, it's incredible the number of storms, and these are billion-dollar events. This is for 2025. And so we had a lot happening in here, Kentucky in particular, with the floods of late, and thinking about what this means to bring communities back. Like, we're still living with consequences of Helene. I mean, North Carolina, Tennessee, they're areas that just have not recovered, and it's a question of what that pace of recovery will ultimately be. This gives you a quick snapshot of what does this look like in terms of fatalities. That's a benchmark people look at in terms of overall effects. So here broadly in red is 2024 alone, the 10-year average in blue and 30-year in yellow. By and large, it's heat. And we're feeling that obviously now. And there are temperatures that we've never seen. Along with this, right after it is flooding. These numbers would definitely get skewed. So if we're looking at hurricanes and big events, Katrina, we lost about 2,000 people in that event. I mean, that's still, having worked on that, that's still, impressed in my heart and my soul about how do we deal with these types of major events. But it's heat here at the end of the day that we really have to be thinking about. And so people are thinking, oh, well, heat, yeah, it's just hot out, it's gonna change. Well, here's our trend. I mean, this is data that we are absolutely staring at in the face. It's like, that trajectory is not good. For the continental US, the temperatures from last spring to this spring are ones that we've never seen before. These are record numbers that we're experiencing. So this is going to continue on this trajectory until we alter some of the behavior, both individually and collectively. And this is the snapshot I just picked up a couple days ago, just to show you the anomalies. This is in degrees Fahrenheit. So the areas even here in kind of brown, these are all 10 degrees higher. So we're looking worldwide for Europe, what they've survived, and doing this without air conditioning in many cases. Having those types of public health impacts are quite significant. So they're going to be needing to make decisions to look at what does this mean for public health for them. And so what we look at in general when we think about risk, so these are the 5 populations in general, we call them most exposed individuals. And so it's pregnant and newborn children, as well as children up to 4, the elderly and chronic illness, because those are the ones in the population that we have to really be thinking about and taking care of. And I think this comes back to our community here as well. So thinking about families and helping them, educate them about what heat stress means. Elderly, particularly people who are living alone, and checking on them and see how they are managing these events. And lastly, those with chronic illness. They could catch up on them and not really realize what the heat is doing in terms of their own health. So the biggest one we need to be thinking about is heat index. So most people have weather apps. Need to have a heat index app if it's not already included in your weather app that you have. So this really tells you what is it like outside. How much energy should I be exerting? How much should I be drinking? How do I stay hydrated? This is for yourself, for your family, your friends, your neighbors. And so it really says, how is your body adapting to this? And so with humidity, you do not sweat appropriately, so your body's not cooling down. So it can creep up on you pretty quickly. And so as the heat index increases, our health risks increase proportionately. And so on the lower end, yes, you're going to get exhausted, you're going to get tired, but obviously the other end is heat stroke. And this creeps up on you very quickly as well. So the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, which is part of the CDC, they have a free app. You can download this, Apple, Android, whatever. But I'd suggest just putting that right next to your weather app that you have, so you're looking at that in the morning to realize, okay, this is what I should be thinking about throughout the day. So I'm going to move from that to give you an example of wildfires. And so I'm providing some information to think about in terms of tools that are readily available. So this I just picked up again, I think, I forget which day I did this recently. A day or two ago. So just looking at across North America here where we have fires. So yes, we're getting huge impacts from Canada. You've probably seen the pictures of Chicago and Michigan the last couple of days. And I was surprised Cincinnati had the smoke this morning, and it was driving down this morning from Cincinnati here. Half the way down there was wildfire smoke. It abated just outside of Louisville. But these are still the same things that we need to be thinking about in terms of public health. While it may be the worst of it's in Canada, still the amount of wildfires that we're having here in the country right now. This is, again, a free app. You can figure out where is this, and so if you're traveling especially, you're going into areas where there may be concerns, good just to pull this up, look what you're getting into, and understand potential strategies. Yet this is another app, and I'm just giving you some cautionary measures here. Think about, yes, your weather app, the heat index map, Air Now. This is US EPA app, and it's still up, still working, still good people on it. And so this one here combines both. It has a smoke map as well as air quality. And so the biggest thing that they are looking at, how safe is it for you to be outside? How safe is it to breathe? And the big thing we look at is PM 2.5. So it's particulate matter that's 2.5 microns. And just to give you a general idea, a strand of hair is probably 50 to 70 microns. So we're talking about really small particles. And so when you breathe, these get deep into your lungs. And those are the major health effects that we're really concerned about. So you can develop asthma and or accentuate problems with asthma as one example. There are cardiac effects, again, that could be developed or accentuated with prolonged exposure to PM 2.5. So that's the major one that we think about. So here again, it will tell you, okay, what is the air quality? How should I be thinking about being outside? What activities do I want to undertake in doing that? And again, I say this so we see our communities and think about each other. So focusing on not only ourselves, our families, our friends and neighbors, and communicating to them about modifications in what they do throughout the day that can really help them and think about climate change and impacts. Next, I want to move to extreme precipitation, which amazing. We had in Cincinnati Friday. It was unbelievable. It was a neighborhood. It was a very localized downpour. They had 6 inches in a couple hours. I mean, it just there was a couple feet of water on roadways. They shut down one whole side of 71. It was a river on 71. And restaurants, homes, they were just inundated. This is in hours. And even people trying to navigate in the city, I mean, Google Maps or Waze, it just was not keeping up. So things were just at an utter standstill on Friday. And so one person died, 3 have been injured, and this came up just like immediately. So if you think about extreme precipitation, your mind typically goes to, okay, I'm not near a waterway, I'm fine. Not anymore. It really depends upon how fast that urban system can move water, and is it going to be fast enough? 6 inches in a couple hours, there's very few systems that can accommodate that. So you need to be thinking what would happen under these scenarios in terms of flooding. And so what we're really dealing with now with increase in temperature, it falls right into the warmer air that is creating more vapors, which that in turn is driving the heavier rainfall. So this trajectory is going to increase on flash floods because of increase in the temperatures that we're experiencing. And this here just shows you a general change for the last few decades. So we're sitting in an area here with much heavier downpours. It's obviously an arbitrary line through here, but mostly through the Midwest and the Northeast, we're seeing much more frequent events. So the flash flooding, with what we are seeing, we're anticipating more of that. We had a record number of flash floods last year, and obviously the Mystic Camp in Texas was one of the more tragic ones that were experienced. Then I listened to some of the stories of the people who survived that, and the major takeaway is like, well, there was no one there to help. I mean, people were left to their own devices to manage that scenario. The emergency warnings didn't go out properly, and the emergency responders, they didn't really understand the situation. So people had to devise their own methods really to manage that situation, and we're seeing that even more. I also have a colleague I work with NASA. His home was destroyed by the wildfires in LA last year, and he already said, here we are in a different time politically. There was really no help for people whose homes burnt down. They were putting together Facebook communities, trading notes. Oh, what should I be monitoring? What personal protection equipment should I have coming back into a home? I never thought we'd be quite in this scenario, but this is where we are. So it's very much now working together, thinking about how we respond to these events. Every state's going to be different. At the national level, there is not near the number of people with the expertise, with the numbers and the qualifications of people who have left the federal government in the last year. We do not have that capacity anymore. So it's shifting. That help they're expecting to come from the states, so it's really going to depend upon the states. So bottom line, there's a lot we can do in terms of this data democratization, understanding the data that we need to anticipate different events. This is also yesterday in New Jersey, same thing. That storm front was moving out to the East Coast. And I want to give you one example. This is work that we did the last several years in supporting a new regulation that actually came out in 2024. This regulation was designed to focus on hazardous substances in large above-ground storage tanks. So we're talking 1 million-gallon tanks storing hazardous substances, many carcinogens. So we did an analysis from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, and so that's a corridor that's called Cancer Alley. It's one of the most potent areas where the number of chemical facilities exists and some of the densest population of cancer in this country. So we looked at almost 750 million pounds of hazardous substances stored just in this corridor, and over 3/4 of them are sitting less than a half a mile to drinking water intake. And so we know not all those water utilities have the ability to even analyze the chemicals that are just upstream from them. So there's risk to public drinking water intakes, and there's risk to private domestic wells. And there's a substantial population there reliant. Private domestic wells, for those who may be on one, know there's no regulations, and it's up to the homeowner to monitor, to treat, and ensure the water quality of that well. So the onus is on the homeowner. So we know here that we've got to be on this. So part of the the reg that we developed was to help put in protective measures to protect those water supplies. This reg is now, the implementation did not occur, and now they're pushing that implementation reg off. So again, we can get information about these facilities and the chemicals that we're looking at. This module is called a chem informatics module, and a colleague of mine developed a module that is the most comprehensive data on hazard and safety of chemicals worldwide. So it's taken all of our data here in the US, all the state data, the European Union data, Australia, Japan, a whole range of countries that combined all that data, the latest chemistry and hazard and safety data on those chemicals in this application. It's like an incredible gift. If we would have had this for East Palestine, we could have made a lot of the determinations in minutes, like what is the risk of the chemicals, what's going to happen if they combust, are they reactive with water? This would have done it. And he, last year, was invited to give a talk to the Nobel Committee because of his work on this. So this has really advanced us. This data has moved us forward so far in terms of understanding the risk. And so one of the things that we're after, we understand that the data that's here is really to take this information about what you find, work with your medical provider, because all the health effects that are associated with this, you need that both near term and long term. And we know, just even like in Flint, Michigan, it was a pediatrician that really broke the case on lead in drinking water. So working together in a community, looking at ourselves and thinking about the future is important. And this is a picture I took of, this is a Superfund site in New Orleans. The decisions were made, this was underwater in Katrina, and there are homes that are just across the street. And people lived in these homes until last year. And so our concern had long been, well, what happened to the transport of the chemicals that should have been designed to stay in place? But when you introduce flooding to any contaminated site, be it a Superfund site, a gas station, that releases exposure, the contaminants and exposures either through vapor intrusion into homes or office buildings and or to the water, depending upon the drinking water source. So we never engineered these types of systems to contain chemicals, adapting for the types of flooding events that we're having now. So it's really thinking what is around you, where you live, how close are you to potential contaminant sources, and understanding what that spatial and temporal risk can be to you. And we have this is on the website for the Uniting Artists and Scientists for Climate Action. There's a whole tool section in there. And with that, you can also, and this is the item here, you can look through this and figure out, there's a thing called Cleanup Semi-Community. So it identifies any potential source of contamination that may be coming in your neighborhood. You can just put in an address and this pops up. On the hazardous substances, Homeland Security has designated that as protected information, but you can work with your state to get that information and have that through your drinking water public utility, and certainly if it's your own home, that you have a right to have that information. So I've gone through this pretty quickly to give you a snapshot of the type of data, but this is in terms of data democratization. This is us in terms of moving forward together, protecting ourselves, protecting our communities in a way that we have that responsibility and know we can use this data to make critical decisions for our future. And so with that, I know, I went through quick.